Somewhere in your life there is a place you visit that makes you smaller. You enter with plans, fire, and purpose, and you leave tired, doubtful, and tame. Nothing violent happens. No one strikes you. They smile, they ask harmless questions, they joke, they change the subject, yet somehow your dream loses breath in that room. Tell me the truth. Do you keep a safe version of yourself for certain people? A voice that grows softer, less ambitious, less definite so no one feels challenged by your hunger? A goal you mention with laughter so if they mock it, you can pretend you did not mean it. A promise you reduce to maybe so you will not have to defend your faith. If that is you, hear me. This speech is not about abandoning love. It is about protecting purpose. For there is a quiet form of destruction that does not look like hatred. It looks like comfort. It looks like tradition. It looks like, come by for a little while. It looks like old labels and old stories that keep you living as the man you used to be. Let me place a question before you now, and it will be answered before I am finished. Are you the kind of man who must separate in order to succeed, or would separation make you weaker? Some men separate and become powerful. Other men separate and become bitter, chaotic, and lost. The difference is not the distance. The difference is the reason, the plan, and the discipline behind it. Now another question, one that stings if you are honest. When you say you are working toward success, who are you trying to convince? Is it them or is it you? The man who truly expects success does not speak like a man waiting for permission. He does not present his dream like a proposal to be voted on. He lives from the inside out, quietly and firmly, until the world is forced to agree. But what happens when you leave your workbench of purpose and step back into a room that trains you to doubt? What happens when the people closest to you do not attack your dream openly but drain it by 1,000 little cuts? They question your time, your intensity, your changes. They call your discipline too much. They call your boundaries cold. They call your hunger selfish. And slowly, without noticing, you begin apologizing for the very traits that would have made you great. Tell me, does your family praise your progress, or do they reward your availability? Do they admire your growth, or do they prefer the old you because the old you was predictable? This is not hatred. It is human nature. People often love you and still resist your evolution because your evolution forces them to face their own stagnation. Now listen closely, for here is the principle most men learn too late. You cannot live as success while you keep returning to environments that require you to shrink. You cannot become definite while you remain surrounded by voices that train you to be vague. You cannot keep a burning desire alive if you keep laying it down at the doorstep of comfort every week. Yet I will tell you something else that is equally true. The answer is not loneliness. The answer is not pride. The answer is not cutting people off in anger. The answer is discrimination. The successful man chooses his influences with the seriousness. He chooses business partners. He knows every conversation is either feeding his aim or starving it. So here's the question that decides everything. Should you build a mastermind around you, or should you separate until you become strong enough to choose the right circle? The mastermind is power when it is made of purpose-driven minds. But a crowd without purpose is not a mastermind, it is a mob. And a mob will always pull you back to average. In this speech, I will show you how to tell the difference. How to know if you are in the season of separation or the season of alliance. How to recognize when your family's love is unintentionally limiting you. Not because they hate you, but because they are attached to the version of you that kept them comfortable. And I will show you the simple rule that keeps your heart clean while your purpose stays protected. You will not abandon them, but you will stop donating your best hours to people who do not understand your calling. You will stop staying so long in places that weaken your ambition. You will stop explaining your dream to those who are committed to misunderstanding it. Then you will begin to live as success, not in loud speeches, but in quiet boundaries, not in arguments, but in decisions, not in wishing, but in a new standard of self-respect. For if you have felt your dream dying slowly in familiar rooms, you are not imagining it. There is a law operating there. Stay with me, and you will learn how to obey love without betraying purpose, how to use separation when separation is required, and how to use the mastermind when it is time to multiply your strength. And when you are finished listening, you will not merely want success. You will live in a way that proves you already belong to it. Part 1, The Law of Spiritual Separation, Why Certain Men Must Withdraw to Evolve. Every man chosen for greatness must first walk alone. It is not cruelty, it is law. No tree reaches the sky whose roots have not first pierced solitude. Every calling of significance begins with separation. For in the silence of isolation, the voice of infinite intelligence can finally be heard without interruption from the crowd. To withdraw is not rebellion, it is obedience. The man who feels compelled to step back from the familiar is not escaping responsibility, he is returning to origin. The noise of ordinary life drowns the higher impulses. Solitude, misunderstood by the weak, is the crucible where strength is shaped. Those who avoid it remain half-formed, forever echoing the opinions of others. Isolation refines the mind as fire purifies gold. When companionship vanishes, excuses vanish with it. A man must face his own indecision, his own fear, his own hypocrisy. In that confrontation, the false self dies and the definite self is born. To those who fear loneliness, this feels like punishment, but to the wise it is promotion. Separation reveals who you are without applause. Surrounded by comfort, a man can pretend to be courageous. Praised by friends, he can seem confident. But when approval disappears, only conviction remains. This is why every builder of empires, of business, thought, or character, passes through obscurity before recognition. Attachment weakens decision. When the opinions of others weigh heavily, the will becomes paralyzed. Every great achievement begins the moment a man no longer needs permission to act. Emotional dependence is disguised bondage. It chains the spirit to the expectations of others. Freedom is not escape from people, but independence from their approval. Growth offends comfort because progress exposes stagnation. The man who rises becomes a mirror in which others see their idleness. They do not hate him. They resist what his change demands of them. That resistance confuses the young builder who still seeks to please, but he must understand to advance is to outgrow, and outgrowing always disturbs those who remain. You cannot bring everyone where you are going. Purpose has its own altitude, and not all lungs can breathe its air. Those who once nourished you may not survive the climate of your new aim. To drag them upward out of sentiment is to slow both of you. Love them, but move forward. They will understand later, when results explain what words could not. How do you know when environment has turned from nourishment to limitation? When conversation repeats but never elevates? When the energy you carry into a room returns to you smaller? When enthusiasm must shrink to survive? That is the signal. It is not betrayal to walk away, it is stewardship of destiny. There is a difference between love that supports and love that suffocates. Support strengthens faith. Suffocation disguises fear as affection. It says, do not risk, for you might fail, and if you fail, I will hurt. Many men surrender to that sentiment and spend decades living small so that others may remain comfortable. But the one who obeys purpose, even when misunderstood, becomes a blessing to all in time. The quiet pull of old identity is the most dangerous resistance. The world whispers, be who you were. It was easier. But the man who listens to that whisper trades destiny for nostalgia. Growth demands burial of the former self. Every promotion requires a funeral. You cannot wear the garments of the old season in the climate of the new. Infinite intelligence always removes distractions before increase. When life begins to subtract people, places, and pleasures, it is not punishment, it is preparation. The pruning may feel painful, but it is merciful. A crowded mind cannot carry new vision. To complain about isolation is to misunderstand divine order. Loneliness is the classroom of purpose. It trains the mind to draw strength from within. Those who cannot endure being alone will never command others, for leadership requires inner supply. The man who fears solitude is still dependent on borrowed energy. The one who embraces it becomes a source of energy himself. Think of Lincoln, self-taught, misunderstood, ridiculed, walking alone across fields reciting law and philosophy to the open air. That isolation carved in him the patience to bear a divided nation. The silence of his youth prepared him to speak with authority when the hour demanded it. His solitude was not failure, it was formation. Thomas Edison worked through thousands of failed experiments, isolated in his laboratory. Others called him obsessive, but he called it devotion. He did not require company to believe. He required belief to attract company. Only after results appeared did the world call him genius. Before that, he was simply a man alone with his purpose. Henry Ford, too, separated from the voices of doubt. When peers called his ideas foolish, he withdrew, not in bitterness, but in focus. His vision of an affordable automobile demanded stillness of thought. From that silence emerged a machine that moved the world. His solitude was the workshop of civilization. Before a man can build a mastermind with others, he must form it within himself. No alliance is fruitful without inner order. The mind must first become its own counsel, its own leader, its own obedient servant. The disciplined imagination becomes the first partner of destiny. Once that harmony exists within, outer alliances appear naturally. Reflection is the habit of the builder. Each evening he reviews his thoughts as an accountant reviews ledgers. He asks, did I move by faith or by fear? Did I think independently or in imitation? This self-inquiry, practiced in solitude, builds the habit of accurate thinking. Accuracy, born of reflection, becomes the foundation of command. Say to yourself each morning, I am not leaving anyone behind. I am advancing toward my purpose. Let that declaration remove guilt from your progress. Advancement is never desertion when its motive is creation. The man who fulfills his purpose blesses more lives than the man who remains behind to appease comfort. Self-trust must be established before alliance can be fruitful. Those who rely on others for direction join partnerships of dependence, not creation. A confident man attracts equals. An uncertain one attracts controllers. Faith in self is the passport to meaningful association. Without it, every relationship becomes a negotiation for permission. Understand this truth, and you will save 10 years of confusion and misplaced loyalty. Many men spend their prime trying to lift those who refuse to rise. They mistake compassion for duty and burn their years explaining what can only be proven by distance. Once they finally separate, life accelerates as though chains have fallen from their feet. The revelation is simple yet profound. Separation is sacred preparation. Infinite intelligence isolates the chosen, not for punishment, but for clarity. In solitude, you remember who you are and why you began. In stillness, you hear command. In obedience, you grow into the stature required for stewardship. Let me show you this through story. There was once a craftsman in a small town. His hands shaped beauty, but his world prized convenience. Each evening he sat with friends who spoke of wages, gossip, and weather. They loved him, but their laughter shrank his vision. Every time he described his idea of building something lasting, they smiled and said, "Be practical." Years passed. He noticed that each visit to their company left him duller, his dreams smaller, the spark that once burned in his eyes dimmed. One night, as they laughed about his impossible plans, something within him awakened. He rose quietly, thanked them for the years, and left the room. That was the night his real life began. For months he worked alone, doubted often, yet persisted. His silence became a wall around his faith. In that stillness, ideas came that he had never seen before. He found discipline where there had been distraction. Years later, when success covered him like sunlight, those same friends said, "You were lucky." They never understood that luck was simply focus undisturbed. Such is the way of every builder. The world sees fortune, the man knows solitude. The world sees harvest, the man remembers the winter of preparation. The applause is sweet, but it does not deceive him, for he knows success is not achieved among men until it is first achieved within himself. If you have felt the call to separate, do not resist it. The discomfort is the signal of growth. The withdrawal is the sign that purpose is maturing. You are not being rejected, you are being refined. When infinite intelligence intends to expand a man, it first confines him to silence. Say often, "I no longer confuse love with permission. I separate to protect purpose, not to prove pride." This sentence is your armor. It will steady your heart when misunderstanding arises. Those who love you purely will one day bless your discipline. Those who loved your comfort will fade quietly. Remember always, the eagle must leave the nest before it learns to fly. The seed must crack before it can grow. The soul must stand alone before it can lead. Separation is not the end of belonging. It is the beginning of purpose. Stand firm in your solitude. Use it to think, to plan, to believe. The world may not understand your silence now, but it will one day live in the results of it. Part 2. The hidden weight of familiarity, how family can keep a man small. There exists a law so subtle that most men live their entire lives enslaved by it without ever naming it, the law of familiarity. What we see too often, we begin to take for granted. What we hear too long, we cease to question. Familiarity softens the edge of purpose. It teaches a man to mistake stillness for peace and repetition for loyalty. In the beginning, home seems harmless. The laughter, the stories, the comfort of known faces, these appear as shelter. But there comes a time when the same walls that once protected begin to confine. The words that once soothed begin to dull ambition. The advice that once guided begins to contradict destiny. The man who does not recognize this turning of the season will live old in body, but young in obedience to those who never left the shore. The most dangerous form of limitation is not imposed by enemies, but by those who love you most. Because love, when unexamined, often seeks safety over progress. Family, friends, and familiar companions rarely mean harm. They simply prefer the version of you that causes them the least discomfort. They remember the boy, the apprentice, the one who once needed their counsel. The idea that you might outgrow that role unsettles them, not from malice, but from habit. It takes great courage to let go of the familiar smile that disguises silent resistance. The mind of mediocrity is clever. It does not argue openly. It makes jokes. It does not forbid you. It distracts you. It cloaks doubt in humor, fear in concern, and jealousy in advice. One moment of laughter at your own expense, and you begin to shrink to fit the image they hold of you. Every successful man must confront this invisible pull. You cannot rise while you are apologizing for your elevation. You cannot carry great ideas while constantly lowering your voice so others feel comfortable. The man who guards everyone's comfort will one day wake to find his dream homeless. The old version of you is useful to others, but fatal to your destiny. People prefer predictability. They knew what to expect of the man who played small. They could depend on his availability, on his self-doubt, on his need for their approval. But the moment he decides to think independently, the balance changes. He becomes less familiar, and therefore to them less safe. You've changed, they say, as if it were an accusation. Indeed he has, and thank heaven for it. To remain the same would be to betray purpose. The seed must change to become the tree. The caterpillar must dissolve to emerge as the butterfly. The law of life itself demands transformation. Only those who refuse to grow call change a crime. Affection often disguises fear of your evolution. They worry that your success will separate you from them. In truth, their fear is not of losing you, but of being reminded of what they refuse to become. The fire of your faith exposes the ashes of their resignation, and rather than confront their own lost desire, they will tell you to slow down, to relax, to be realistic. Realistic in their language means ordinary, and ordinary is the slow death of all men who once burned for greatness. You must understand this. The human mind adjusts its expectations to the average of its surroundings. If you live among those who measure progress by comfort, you will soon do the same. But if you dwell among men who measure progress by discipline, you will rise naturally. The choice of company determines the direction of destiny. Familiarity dulls gratitude. Those who have always had access to you seldom see your worth. They see not your growth, but the shadow of your former self. They call you by your old name, speak to you in old tones, and interpret your new confidence as arrogance. The man who requires approval from such voices remains imprisoned in his childhood identity. Andrew Carnegie was once a poor boy, mocked by those who considered him too ambitious. His peers laughed at his dreams of building industries beyond their imagination, yet he kept his eyes fixed on his vision, not their laughter. When fortune came, it carried with it not revenge, but vindication. His wealth became the proof that obedience to purpose is the truest form of gratitude to those who doubted you. Charles Schwab, too, was once criticized for his optimism. His superiors called it childish. His co-workers whispered that his cheerfulness was arrogance. But Schwab understood that enthusiasm was faith in action. He refused to dim his light to match the gloom of others. And because he stayed faithful to his temperament, he rose above them all, earning not just wealth, but influence that shaped an era. The delicate art of loving people without obeying their limits is learned through patience. You must not resent them for misunderstanding you. Resentment is poison. Instead, observe the law. Let your results become your explanation. Silence is the most effective argument. When success blooms, understanding follows. Even those who once resisted your dream will find comfort in your proof. Many men waste years defending their purpose in every conversation. They believe persuasion can replace demonstration. But words spoken to those without faith fall to the ground like seed on stone. Your discipline must protect you from the exhaustion of endless justification. You do not owe anyone explanation for the fire that burns within you. There is a spiritual law that few understand. The one who obeys his purpose eventually elevates those he once left. Separation, when born of faith, is never permanent. The light that shines brightest in distance becomes guidance for those still in shadow. Your success, rightly used, will serve those who could not yet believe. Do not mistake your family's fear of risk for wisdom. Their caution may sound protective, but it is usually projection. They speak from their limitations, not yours. To accept their fears as your own is to inherit chains disguised as advice. Listen respectfully, then act decisively. Let the results become the teacher. The man who spends his life negotiating his time with those who do not share his aim will find that his purpose rots under the weight of compromise. To live effectively, you must learn to disappoint those who prefer your weakness. Discipline is not cruelty. It is love guided by understanding. Repeat this affirmation until it governs your mind. I can love people deeply and still outgrow them. This truth will save you decades of guilt. Outgrowing does not mean rejection. It means completion. The tree does not hate the seed. It simply outgrows it. To stay a seed to please the soil would be to deny the law of life itself. Imagine a young man whose every idea was dismissed as foolish. At the family table, each attempt to discuss his vision was met with jokes. Here he goes again, they laughed. He laughed too, to protect his dream from ridicule. But laughter could not hide the quiet death of belief, until one night he decided that silence would serve him better than argument. He stopped seeking their approval. He stopped explaining. He worked in quiet for years. The ridicule faded because there was nothing left to mock. When his enterprise succeeded, the same people said, "We always knew you would make it." They never understood that their disbelief was his greatest education. This is the lesson. Family often believes only after results appear, never before. Therefore, do not seek faith from those who have not learned to believe for themselves. It is not their fault. They cannot give what they do not possess. Let their doubt remind you to strengthen your conviction. Love requires distance when nearness breeds diminishment. You cannot remain forever in circles that reward your comfort more than your growth. True love rejoices in transformation. Conditional love fears it. If those around you only cheer when you stay the same, they do not love your potential. They love their control over you. The need for approval destroys creativity. Every decision filtered through the question, "What will they think?" becomes diluted. Faith requires boldness. Approval demands compromise. You cannot serve both. You must choose between the applause of the present and the progress of the future. When infinite intelligence gives you a vision, it also gives you responsibility to protect it. That protection often looks like silence, solitude, and selective presence. You cannot discuss a divine assignment with casual minds. To expose it prematurely is to allow disbelief to wound it before it is strong enough to stand. There is a sacred rhythm in growth. Every season of expansion begins with rejection from the familiar. This rejection is not punishment. It is proof of promotion. Those who once embraced you will now question you, not because you are wrong, but because your evolution reminds them that they have remained still. You teach others how to treat your dream by the way you treat it yourself. If you speak of it carelessly, they will treat it as fantasy. If you defend it desperately, they will sense insecurity. But if you live it quietly, faithfully, and with discipline, even the skeptic will one day respect its endurance. Remember always, discipline is the wall around your faith. It protects emotion from unnecessary battles. You need not explain to every critic, nor justify every decision. The builder does not stop to answer every passerby who questions his design. He builds until the structure speaks for him. The man who remains loyal to environments that belittle his potential wastes his most sacred resource, time. He will find himself repeating years instead of advancing through them. Each repetition of compromise delays destiny. Understanding this one law can save you 10, 20, even 30 years of unnecessary delay. Say this to yourself each morning. I will not apologize for my growth. I will remain kind, but I will no longer shrink. These words are not arrogance. They are alignment. They remind you that love and purpose are not enemies. True love supports growth. True purpose honors love. The weak man separates them. The wise man unites them through discernment. Familiarity is gravity, but discipline is flight. Break the pull gently, without bitterness. Rise in silence. Let the winds of progress carry you where encouragement cannot. When results bloom, even those who misunderstood you will take pride in your name. You will see that your courage did not sever love. It purified it. The family that once confined you will one day benefit from the man you became when you obeyed purpose. The very environment that resisted your growth will be healed by the strength your obedience produced. This is the law of compensation. Sacrifice today returns as service tomorrow. So do not hesitate. Step forward in faith. Leave behind the need to be understood. Walk alone if you must, but never walk backward. Every step you take toward purpose pulls others closer to their own. That is how one man's obedience redeems a generation. Part 3, the science of controlled association, building a circle that multiplies power. Every mind, whether it knows it or not, is shaped by association. Thought is contagious. Habit spreads without permission. A man becomes, over time, the composite of the 5 minds he communes with most, through words, through conversation, and even through silent influence. This is law. No one rises or falls alone. Environment is not limited to geography. It is the invisible climate of influence that surrounds thought. Sit among doubters, and faith weakens. Sit among builders, and confidence strengthens. Every association either drains energy or multiplies it. To master life, one must learn the science of controlled association, the deliberate selection of company according to purpose. The first lesson is this: wrong company will always feel easier, but right company will always demand growth. Mediocrity is comfortable because it requires nothing but agreement. Greatness is uncomfortable because it requires accountability. Therefore, many men choose the warmth of familiarity over the discipline of excellence and call it friendship. The mastermind principle rests on eternal law. When 2 or more minds are harmoniously united under a definite purpose, they create a third mind, a combined intelligence greater than the sum of the parts. It is the spiritual chemistry of success. It multiplies courage, accelerates ideas, and builds results that solitary effort could never produce. But harmony cannot exist among untrained minds. Temporary solitude is the price of selective connection. The man who has not first learned to govern himself will ruin every alliance he joins. Before seeking partners, conquer your moods, your pride, and your need for dominance. The mastermind is built by equals, not by masters and servants. You must distinguish between companions of comfort and companions of faith. The first group soothes your weakness. The second demands your strength. One makes you feel content. The other compels you to grow. When you leave the company of faith builders, you feel exhausted but elevated. When you leave the company of comfort lovers, you feel entertained but empty. The average mind fears definiteness because it threatens conformity. It prefers endless discussion to decision, for discussion costs nothing but time. Definiteness, however, demands courage. It divides the dreamers from the doers. Surround yourself not with talkers, but with men of direction. One decisive friend is worth 1,000 conversationalists. Avoid the endless symposium of those who meet only to exchange doubt. There is a difference between counsel and complaint. Counsel clarifies. Complaint corrodes. One strengthens the nerve, the other dissolves it. The man who spends his evenings in aimless talk about obstacles will wake to find his own will weaker than before. The rule is simple. Never confide vision in those who cannot carry it. A great idea placed in a small mind becomes a burden instead of a blessing. Protect your plans from those who live by limitation. Even well-meaning men destroy great possibilities when they interpret them through their own disbelief. Choose allies based on discipline, not sentiment. Affection is pleasant, but it does not produce results. Loyalty built on emotion fades under pressure. Loyalty built on shared purpose endures. The test of true partnership is this: does this man strengthen my faith, challenge my thinking, and demand my best effort? If not, keep your path solitary until you find such men. Gossip and complaint are the twin enemies of power. They create invisible leaks in the mind, draining focus and vitality. A man who permits gossip in his circle is like a merchant who leaves his vault open to thieves. Every word of pettiness costs energy that could have built progress. Speak only of aims, plans, and lessons. You can recognize builders by their tone. They speak less of obstacles and more of principles. They spend little time discussing people and much time discussing ideas. When they meet, energy rises, not falls. Even silence among them feels constructive. You leave their company with your mind sharper, your heart steadier, and your belief fortified. The invisible current of faith passes between focused minds. When one grows weary, the other's conviction restores balance. This is why great leaders assemble councils of men whose spirits are anchored in definite purpose. The combined certainty of many trained wills forms a wall against discouragement that no failure can penetrate. Edison, Ford, and Firestone often retreated together into the wilderness to exchange ideas. They spoke little of money, less of rivals, and much of vision. Their meetings were not entertainment, they were ignition. Each man carried the burden of progress in his own field, yet each drew inspiration from the other's conviction. From that invisible alliance came industries that transformed the modern world. Napoleon Bonaparte built his empire not merely through strategy, but through selection. He gathered men of genius in engineering, law, and leadership, then united them under his purpose. Their differing skills became instruments of one mind. When harmony broke, his empire fell, not by force, but by disunity. The mastermind cannot survive discord. Shared ideals accelerate progress geometrically. 2 men of faith produce strength. 3 produce momentum. A dozen produce destiny. The law of growth is exponential when applied to unified purpose. The moment harmony breaks, the power vanishes. Therefore, the wise man guards unity as he guards gold. Mutual accountability is the lifeblood of alliance. When men of equal strength remind one another of their promises, weakness becomes rare. Iron sharpens iron is more than metaphor. It is physics of spirit. Without accountability, even genius degenerates into drift. A faithful ally is not one who comforts excuses, but one who refuses them. Understand the difference between advice and influence. Advice is external. It instructs. Influence is internal. It shapes. The man who holds authority in your mind influences you more than the man who merely advises. Therefore, choose whose voice you permit to become law within you. A single wrong influence can destroy years of self-discipline. You may build alliances not only with living men, but with the dead. The great minds of history still offer counsel to those who study them deeply. This invisible mastermind, formed through books, letters, and reflection, unites you with the likes of Emerson, Lincoln, or Carnegie. Their thoughts, absorbed repeatedly, begin to think through you. You are never alone when you read with purpose. Each morning repeat this affirmation. Every man who contributes to my purpose is part of my silent counsel. This reminds you that you are surrounded, seen or unseen, by those who believe in advancement. Gratitude for allies strengthens intuition to recognize them when they appear. No true partnership comes by chance. All are magnetized by readiness. A builder once labored alone for years. His ideas were sound, but progress was slow. Then one day he met 3 men of similar purpose, each possessing strength where he was weak. They formed a pact of discipline. One handled numbers, one managed men, one guarded faith. In 1 year, they achieved what none had achieved in 10. The power of combined purpose multiplied their time, their courage, and their reach. This is the secret many never learn. Solitude builds identity, but unity multiplies power. Isolation gives birth to strength. Alliance directs it. The man who masters both will surpass the one who depends solely on either. He will know when to retreat for clarity and when to join for conquest. Controlled association saves 20 years of lonely struggle. Many men labor endlessly because they attempt alone what could be accomplished through cooperation. Others remain forever average because they join with the wrong companions. The wise man understands both dangers and walks the narrow line between independence and interdependence. The law of controlled association is moral as well as practical. Infinite intelligence never grants a vision to a man who will squander it among the unfit. Therefore, if your dream still feels delayed, examine your circle. Perhaps the law withholds progress until you create harmony sufficient to sustain it. Observe nature. Even the strongest rivers form from many streams moving in one direction. The moment they divide, they lose force. So it is with men. A group without unity is a puddle. A group with unity is a current that shapes continents. Do not mistake noise for movement. Some circles gather often, speak loudly, and accomplish nothing. Their unity is social, not spiritual. True harmony is quiet, deliberate, and definite. It exists not in emotion, but in shared decision. As your influence expands, guard your associations even more carefully. Success attracts both builders and parasites. The same light that guides friends also draws moths. To keep the flame pure, you must close the window of access. Be courteous to all, intimate with few, and loyal to none who break discipline. When selecting partners, measure their attitude toward adversity. Men who scatter at the first sign of pressure will not stand beside you when crisis strikes. Faith untested is illusion. Choose those whose calm under fire equals your own. One steady companion in storm is worth more than 100 in fair weather. Controlled association requires humility. The proud refuse alliance because they cannot share glory. Yet every empire of achievement stands upon cooperation. Even the great Edison required assistance to execute his ideas. Pride isolates, humility multiplies. Let your alliances serve purpose, not ego. When cooperation becomes a contest for recognition, dissolution follows. True leaders share credit generously and assume blame silently. Such conduct builds loyalty stronger than contracts. Remember always that association is a mirror. You attract what you are prepared to host. If you desire disciplined partners, become one. If you desire faithful allies, embody faithfulness. Infinite intelligence arranges alliances through likeness of vibration. The company you keep reveals your inner order. To end, consider this. A single coal removed from the fire cools rapidly. But when returned to the pile, it reignites. Yet the coal that never knew flame can offer no heat. Solitude teaches you to burn alone. Alliance teaches you to burn together. Master both, and you will possess a power that neither solitude nor society can give alone. Repeat once more the creed of alliance. I no longer seek company. I select alliance. I build circles that build me. Let this truth guide every partnership you form. Then no man can waste your energy, and no crowd can mislead your focus. For the man who obeys this law, time bends in his favor. Goals that once seemed distant begin to rush toward him. Infinite intelligence favors those who cooperate with its principles, and he who governs his associations governs his destiny. Part 4, Protecting Purpose Without Hardness, How to Separate Without Hate. There is a danger that stalks men who outgrow their surroundings, a danger more subtle than failure and more corrosive than doubt. It is the hardness of heart that often follows misunderstanding. When a man first separates from the familiar, he carries wounds invisible to others. The sting of ridicule, the silence of those who once praised him, the mockery of those who called him too serious. If he is not careful, the same pain that once refined him begins to embitter him. Bitterness poisons power. It disguises itself as strength, but it is weakness wearing armor. The embittered man walks with rigid pride, mistaking resentment for resolve. He cuts people off not because he has mastered solitude, but because he cannot forgive. His success, when it comes, feels hollow. His peace, brittle. He wins arguments but loses joy. The law of achievement demands purity of motive. Infinite intelligence does not cooperate with hatred, even when hatred seems justified. The universe responds to faith, gratitude, and definiteness, not to vengeance. A mind clouded by bitterness cannot receive guidance. The angry man prays for increase, but leaks power through every grudge he carries. When a man separates to protect his purpose, he must also protect his heart. To walk away with peace is mastery. To walk away with scorn is bondage by another name. The strongest man leaves quietly, without the need to prove his worth to those who doubted him. True power moves without noise, for it no longer seeks recognition. You must learn to recognize the difference between boundaries and arrogance. Boundaries say, I will not compromise my purpose. Arrogance says, I am better than you. The first builds walls of protection. The second builds towers of isolation. The disciplined man sets boundaries with humility, understanding that he too was once limited. Forgiveness restores focus. When the heart is clean, the mind becomes sharp again. The act of forgiving is not approval of wrong. It is liberation from distraction. Many ambitious men consumed by anger never reach greatness because their energy is spent replaying old injuries. Forgiveness closes the account so that energy may flow toward creation. Learn the art of silent separation. Do not announce every departure. Do not explain every boundary. The need to justify yourself is proof that you still seek permission. Leave without drama, without resentment, without farewell speeches meant to wound. Let results become your only statement. The man who walks in silence moves faster than the one who argues while leaving. Infinite intelligence honors men who keep their hearts pure under misunderstanding. The test of moral maturity is not success, but serenity, the ability to remain calm when misjudged. Every visionary is, for a season, mistaken for a fool. The wise do not correct every critic, they outlast them. Time, the final witness, vindicates all obedience. Anger wastes creative energy. It burns the very fuel needed to construct your purpose. Resentment keeps you tied to the very people you wish to surpass. Each grudge is an invisible cord anchoring the soul to the past. To break free, you must cut not with hatred, but with peace. Peace severs more cleanly than fury ever could. Consider Lincoln, who carried mercy even toward those who despised him. When his nation tore itself in two, he refused to retaliate in anger. His calm was not weakness, it was faith in principle. He knew that hatred only multiplies division, while forgiveness rebuilds nations. His greatness was not merely political, it was spiritual discipline expressed in leadership. Calmness protects altitude. Just as an airplane cannot climb through turbulence, the mind cannot rise through anger. Stillness is the pilot of destiny. The man who can remain composed when others lose control gains the advantage of perspective. The calmer you remain, the more accurately you think. The more accurately you think, the more decisively you act. Emotional reactivity is evidence of remaining enslavement to approval. The one who still explodes at criticism has not yet escaped dependence on others' opinions. True freedom is indifference to misunderstanding. When your inner world is ordered, outer chaos becomes irrelevant. Say within yourself, I bless those who doubt me, for they confirm my direction. This affirmation transforms irritation into gratitude. Every skeptic strengthens resolve. Every insult sharpens precision. Life uses opposition to carve endurance. Blessing those who resist you disarms their power to distract you. There are two truths you must hold without conflict. Love people, obey purpose. Love is divine, purpose is divine. To pit them against one another is confusion. You can remain affectionate without remaining accessible. You can honor others without halting your march. Distance, when guided by principle, is not rejection. It is respect for destiny. No man ever grew smaller by forgiving. Those who forgive remain free. Those who cling to offense carry their enemies wherever they go. Resentment is invisible companionship with those who hurt you. Forgiveness dismisses them from your company. It is the highest expression of self-command. Resentment and pride often disguise themselves as strength. I don't need anyone, says the bitter man, while secretly craving recognition. Pride hardens the face but weakens the will. It shuts out inspiration and isolates the heart. True strength is not hardness. It is flexibility guided by faith. Steel that will not bend eventually breaks. The reward of silence is peace. Every word of retaliation invites new conflict. Let misunderstanding echo unanswered. The man who resists the urge to explain grows twice as powerful, for his energy remains directed toward creation. When others spend hours in argument, he spends hours in building. In time, the results make his case for him. Answer criticism with excellence. Do not descend to the level of those who question your integrity. Their doubts are their limitation, not yours. Meet every insult with improved performance, every rumor with visible progress. Excellence turns accusation into admiration over time. A certain man once left his small town to pursue invention. When success found him, word returned home that he had become proud. The accusation wounded him, and for years he carried bitterness toward those who misunderstood his sacrifice. He avoided them, spoke ill of them, and began to lose peace. One day, an old teacher wrote, "Do not despise them. They could not see from your height." Those words broke the hardness around his heart. He forgave, and peace returned. From that day, his work flowed with new inspiration. His mind, once burdened by unseen resentment, became clear as glass. That single act of forgiveness accomplished what months of toil could not: restoration of creative power. Bitterness clouds perception. Forgiveness sharpens it. The man who forgives sees opportunities invisible to the vengeful. He hears ideas more clearly, attracts allies more swiftly, and walks lighter through adversity. Life moves faster around those who carry no emotional weight. Even when you separate from harmful influence, remain courteous. Courtesy is not submission, it is discipline. Harsh words reveal insecurity. Gentle strength reveals mastery. The man who can be kind under provocation has conquered himself. Such composure disarms opposition without conflict. Guard your emotional climate as carefully as your finances. Emotional waste is more costly than monetary loss, for it drains the source of action. A disciplined mind stores peace as capital. When storms arise, he withdraws from that account without depletion. Understand that hatred, like debt, compounds interest. Each time you replay an old offense, you invest new energy in it. Soon it owns you. Forgiveness, by contrast, cancels the debt. It restores credit with infinite intelligence, which does not transact with hearts burdened by grievance. A man who cannot forgive cannot hold power for long. History is full of rulers who built empires yet died in bitterness, their victories hollow. The enduring leaders, Lincoln, Washington, Ford, Carnegie, carried mercy toward those who mocked them. Their legacy endures because their hearts stayed free. Let the proud waste years on revenge. You will use those same years to refine skill, expand faith, and fortify discipline. The time others spend on resentment, you will spend on creation. That alone will place you decades ahead. Forgive quickly, detach gracefully, and return your attention to purpose. Life rewards the man who keeps his inner weather clear. Infinite intelligence communicates through intuition, a delicate signal easily drowned by stormy emotion. Keep your skies calm and your hearing sharp. Every departure tests humility. When you outgrow your surroundings, do not boast about distance. Quietly move forward. Those who once resisted you may one day need your example. Meet them not with pride, but with poise. The returning man of peace commands more respect than the one who left in anger. Affirm this truth: I can separate without resentment. My distance is peace, not pride. Let it govern every departure. Then you will never suffer loneliness, only preparation. You will walk away not as a rebel, but as a steward of focus. Forgiveness is the final gate to mastery. Cross it, and life unfolds without friction. Carry bitterness, and every door squeaks. The sound of resentment announces unfitness for leadership. The silent man, purified by grace, enters quietly and possesses his realm. To protect purpose without hardness is to understand divine law. Strength must remain merciful. Authority must remain humble. Success must remain kind. The moment you lose compassion, you lose connection to the source of power itself. The heart that closes to others soon closes to inspiration. Walk forward, then, not with clenched fists, but with open hands. Release every name, every memory, every wound that divides you from peace. Those who once misunderstood will see in time. Your forgiveness will teach them more than your anger ever could. And when you reach the height your purpose promised, you will look back without bitterness. You will see that even the doubters, the mockers, and the critics were instruments of discipline, sent to purify your intention. You will thank them in your thoughts, bless them in your prayers, and continue upward. For this is the highest strength, to love without need, to forgive without announcement, and to rise without resentment. When you have mastered that, you have mastered yourself. And when you have mastered yourself, no power on earth can limit what infinite intelligence will do through you. Part 5. The Return of Strength, Becoming the Example Others Aspire to Follow. There comes a moment when the years of separation, silence, and self-discipline bear fruit. The once isolated man begins to feel an inward shift, less haste, less argument, less need to prove. He moves differently now, not from rebellion, but from rhythm. He no longer strains to be understood. He stands as understanding itself. His strength is quiet. His peace is authority. The circle that once misunderstood him now watches with curiosity. They cannot explain his calm or his certainty, but they feel it. The man who once defended his ambition has become the evidence of its worth. His very presence explains what words never could. Those who mocked his discipline now call it devotion. Those who doubted his silence now call it wisdom. This is the full circle of purpose: separation, refinement, mastery, and then influence. The man who obeys this law never returns the same. When he steps again into familiar rooms, the air itself feels different. He brings order without command, inspiration without speeches. People straighten unconsciously when he enters, for his composure demands it. Self-mastery, not revenge, is the true proof of success. The small mind measures victory by comparison. The disciplined mind measures it by composure. The need to prove superiority is the last chain of inferiority. When that chain breaks, freedom begins. The truly powerful man does not triumph over others. He triumphs within himself. Calm composure unsettles before it inspires. At first, those who once ridiculed him feel discomfort in his presence. They cannot locate the man they once teased. His reactions are gone. His humor, once self-deprecating, is now dignified. They speak to provoke, but he answers with kindness. They test him, but he remains steady. Soon their mockery turns to respect, and respect becomes quiet admiration. The law of demonstration is eternal. Teach by example, not by explanation. The returning man no longer argues ideals. He embodies them. The world no longer needs to be convinced. It needs to be shown. Every act of integrity, every moment of restraint, every decision made in faith becomes a sermon louder than words. To re-enter familiar places without losing identity is mastery of balance. You must walk in humility, remembering the path you once shared, but without surrendering the progress you have earned. Familiar faces will still call you by old names. Smile and let them. You are no longer compelled to correct their vision. Time will. Returning stronger redeems the pain of separation. Every hour once spent in isolation now proves necessary. The ridicule that once stung now feels like training. You see that every rejection refined you for this quiet arrival. What once seemed loss now reveals itself as protection. Infinite intelligence wastes no experience. All pain is tuition for peace. Now you learn the noblest use of success, to help others rise without lowering your standard. The immature rescuer drags others upward by force, exhausting himself. The wise leader ascends steadily, inviting others through example. He does not pull, he demonstrates the way. He does not argue, he is the argument. Results become his language. He needs no boasting, no persuasion. The very order of his affairs, the way he speaks, keeps his word, manages his time, convinces others of the law he lives by. Success expressed as consistency is more inspiring than any display of wealth. The world, long deaf to advice, listens eagerly to example. True power requires no announcement. Humility is its crown. The man who has conquered himself has no desire to dominate others. He leads because others trust his steadiness. His humility is not weakness, but precision. He does not waste force on vanity. He directs it toward creation. Henry Ford once faced ridicule from peers who called his dreams foolish. Years later, he employed the same men who had mocked him, not out of vengeance, but because he valued competence over pride. His calm made him formidable. His forgiveness made him immortal. He proved that success is greatest when it benefits even those who doubted it. John D. Rockefeller, too, understood restraint. When accused of greed, he responded with philanthropy. When challenged by rivals, he responded with efficiency. His power lay not in possession, but in composure. He knew that a calm mind governs fortune more effectively than ambition without control. The true leader draws no line of pride between us and them. He sees all men as potential, each at a different stage of awakening. Those who resisted him were necessary. They made his conviction visible by contrast. The enlightened man blesses his adversaries as the instruments of his discipline. Every judgment you endured can now become fuel for service. The harsh words that once wounded you become the stories that heal others. The humiliation you overcame becomes the lesson that spares another man years of confusion. The disciplined soul does not hoard experience, he redeems it. The law of compensation operates now in your favor. What you lost in approval, you regain in influence. The voices that once silenced you are replaced by invitations to speak. The doors that once closed now open of their own accord. The man who walked alone returns to find the crowd following the path he carved. Be warned, however, the danger of superiority waits at this summit. Pride is the thief that robs the final harvest. The moment you look down upon those who have not yet risen, you forfeit the grace that elevated you. The man who believes himself beyond temptation is already its victim. Remain humble, for humility keeps the channel to infinite intelligence open. Many of those who once resisted your growth will seek your counsel in silence. They will approach cautiously, ashamed of past mockery, hoping you have forgotten. Receive them kindly. Nothing magnifies strength more than mercy. When you extend guidance without reminding them of old insults, you display true mastery of spirit. Repeat this affirmation: I lead by example. My peace is my proof. Let this be your creed. When the world looks for evidence of your philosophy, let them find it in your composure, your fairness, your patience. Peace, when steady and unforced, persuades where argument cannot. In time, you will notice that loneliness has turned to legacy. The very qualities that once isolated you, discipline, focus, vision, now attract those ready for growth. Men who once avoided you for seriousness now seek you for counsel. Your solitude becomes the well from which others drink strength. Understand that separation was never about them. It was about readiness for stewardship. The man who cannot lead himself cannot lead others. The years of obscurity were not exile. They were apprenticeship under divine law. Only after mastery of self does infinite intelligence entrust a man with the power to guide. To save decades of conflict, guilt, and hesitation, remember this: no life rises in harmony with its past environment. Every metamorphosis demands solitude before service. The butterfly returns to the garden it once crawled through, but not as a worm. It returns to pollinate, to bless, to continue the cycle. So must you. There is a parable told among builders. A man once left his quiet village to pursue a dream the elders mocked. They said, "He will return a fool." Years passed. The village aged. The man returned, not in triumph, but in silence. He rebuilt the wells, paved the roads, funded schools. The elders who doubted him wept as they realized that his departure had been love disguised as distance. He never reminded them of their words. He never demanded apology. His success spoke gently for him. That is true greatness, not noise, not pride, but contribution that endures beyond reputation. The highest form of victory is usefulness. When you reach that state, you will no longer feel the need to explain destiny. You will simply live it. Each day becomes prayer through action, each decision a seed of improvement, each act of service a statement of gratitude to the infinite mind that guided your path. Your peace will teach more than your prosperity. Your consistency will convert more than your speeches. Your calm will heal more than your arguments. The world does not need louder men. It needs steadier ones. Be that man. Say within yourself, I do not leave to escape. I separate to strengthen. And when I return as proof that faith obeyed is never wasted. Let this truth guide every season of solitude, every chapter of growth, and every return that follows. Then you will find that even those who once resisted you begin to change, not because you forced them, but because your presence made smallness uncomfortable. They will rise by imitation, just as you once rose by example. Your strength becomes their permission. And when your days draw to a close, you will look back without regret. You will see that nothing was lost in separation. Every tear, every misunderstanding, every lonely night was the currency of wisdom. You will bless every hardship, for it trained your spirit to command without cruelty, to lead without pride, to love without fear. The man who obeys purpose without hatred becomes a living channel of infinite intelligence. Through him, ideas take form, lives are changed, and progress continues long after his name fades. His work speaks where his voice is silent. His influence becomes atmosphere, felt, not declared. Thus the law completes its cycle. Separation created identity. Identity attracted alliance. Forgiveness restored peace. Mastery produced influence, and influence fulfilled the reason for existence. He has become not merely successful, but useful. And usefulness is the true definition of greatness. So let this be your final understanding. The purpose of separation was never to elevate you above others. It was to make you fit to serve them better. The distance you kept from comfort made you strong enough to carry others toward their own freedom. In serving them, you fulfill the divine partnership between man and infinite intelligence. Walk, then, not as one who was misunderstood, but as one who now understands, not as one who left, but as one who returned, not as one seeking approval, but as one extending peace. You are no longer merely a man of ambition. You are a man of authority tempered by mercy. This is the end of striving. This is the birth of stewardship. This is the fulfillment of law. And now, having passed through solitude, sacrifice, and silence, you may finally rest in the quiet certainty that your life itself has become the example others aspire to follow.